So now that this variation is present, we have some more variety in the harmony. We have some new paths that have been created from chord to chord. We have some new cadences that have also been created. So let's talk about those a little bit briefly using mapping tonal harmony so you can see what it is we've done through this variation. So in the original progression, we had 1, 5, 6, 4, and then it went back to 1 again. So that movement of the 4 to the 1 has activated in Mapping Tonal Harmony Pro this Cadence Detector. This yellow line, this curved yellow line that you see going from the subdominant region to the tonic region is saying, hey, that's a Plagal Cadence. And you may have heard that term before and not know what it means. There's probably a bunch of terms you've probably heard before and don't understand what they are, or you just take them at face value and just know that that's what it is. But just try to keep in mind forward or moving forward, I don't know, if something has a name, it's probably for a reason. It's probably been around long enough and been used and used and used over and over again to the point where we're like, hey, let's name this because this pattern keeps showing up. So if something is named, if you see Plagal Cadence, if you hear a term like 251, or if you hear authentic cadence, try to delve into a little bit what that means, because there's a reason it's named whatever it's named. There's a reason we call green green and red red, because they just keep showing up and we need a way to describe them. The terms are more or less arbitrary, why we call them what they call them for the most part. But if it has a name, there's a reason for it. It's an element. It gets used again and again and again, and you want to be able to identify that. And also, the communication is nice when someone's talking to you and they say something you want to know what they mean, and vice versa. So a Plagal cadence is essentially when I go from the 4 chord to the 1 chord. It's just a path. It's just a harmonic way for me to get from here to there. You see it in gospel music all the time, and it's in some church hymns. It's a really common theme. The other cadence I mentioned was the authentic cadence, and that's when you go from 5 to 1. And then once again, Mapping Tonal Harmony has detected that authentic cadence through that curved yellow line, telling you, hey, you're doing something, that's a thing, right? So there's all these tools within the app that let you know that's a thing, this is what it's called, that's another thing, that's what this is called. So try to keep your eyes open for that when you're using it, so that you know these elements when they occur, what they're called, and when you're using them on purpose or deliberately, okay? So one of the reasons that the 6th chord, or in this case A minor, is a nice fit or a substitution or a break from the norm that is the C chord or the 1 chord is, well, it occupies the same tonic region that 1 does. And if you remember from our previous series, we talked about a lot of the chords within a region are oftentimes interchangeable with one another as substitutions. Another reason we get this nice stepwise movement in the bass. And that's always what you want your bass to do. That's an element you can kind of look for in songs that are popular. And you'll see this movement of the bass is either in stepwise motion or by fifths or fourths. And that's what we get exactly if we go from 5 to 6. Before it was a 5 to 1, so that bass was moving by way of a fifth. And Mapping Tonal Harmony is telling us all this, right? So right there, that arrow down shows you that your bass is moving down a fifth. Before, when we went to the 6th chord, and of course you had the authentic cadence detector highlighted. Before, when we went to the 6th chord, now you have this indication here telling you that your bass is moving up by way of a step. And then of course the deceptive cadence indicator is on as well. So in No Woman No Cry, this deceptive cadence is used from the 2nd into the 3rd chord, and he has an inversion on the G chord, on the 5 chord, that moves the bass down in stepwise movement, which is exactly what we were just talking about, right? So this deceptive cadence combined with the inversion of the G chord gives us 2 really cool harmonic elements that show up in music all the time. We see it in songs like Dust in the Wind. You have this same key too, by the way. You have the C, G over B to A minor. So you have a deceptive cadence by way of stepwise movement in the bass through the inversion of the 5 chord. Close my eyes. Right? So another song in the same exact key that uses the same exact progression, that doesn't do the descending bass line, doesn't use the inversion of the 5 chord to get to the 6 chord, is Let It Be. He just goes right to the G, rooted in G. So you get, when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me. Right? And if you wanted to, you could have used the G over B, or they could have used the G over B, or you can use the G over B when you go from a 1 to a 5 chord, and you're going to get harmonically very much the same thing. So your melody will still work on top of the G over B. Everything will fit exactly the way it did before. You just have a cool little linear bass line. So there are also a couple more themes that all these songs share that make them similar, besides just their 1-5-6-4-ness, just besides their harmonic progression. One thing is that they're really simple as far as accessibility and easy to listen to-ness and all that stuff that makes them, I don't know, enjoyable. It's just 4 chords, and superimposed onto our map, it is the simplest iteration of our map. There's 7 levels to the map, and they go all the way up to here, and get more and more and more complicated. So when you get to the complete map, you can see all your options related to the key of C. And as you can see, it's a lot and it's complicated. But it doesn't have to be so. Pachelbel proved it, Bob Marley proved it, the Beatles proved it. It gets reiterated time and time again that sometimes less is more, right? And this is another theme we talked about ad nauseum in our previous series of reharmonization. These are the tools. You don't have to use them all. Not only do you not have to use them all, you can use a really simple form of the map. And I can make it even simpler. If we're only looking at the chords that show up in our song, boom, there's just 4 of them. That's it. All right, but within these 4 chords, we're getting all these cool ideas like plagal cadences and authentic cadences and paths and stepwise movement in the bass and all this really interesting detailed stuff. So aside the fact that they're all 1-5-6-4s and that they're all relatively simple, they also have their own elements or motives that make them unique to the song that they are. So Bob Marley's elements or secret sauce or whatever you want to call it in this song, we're going to talk about 3 of them. We're going to talk about this rhythmic syncopation that keeps happening, this cool little bass line that happens during the authentic cadence, as well as this organ lick that shows up in all the verses.